Next up, we need to talk about our friend, the triple equals operator, and our kind of friend, the double equals operator, in terms of arrays. So if we have two numbers, or let's do strings, right? I have the string hi and another string that looks exactly the same, hi. They are the same. They are considered triple equal to one another. So they are, they're equal to each other. I don't know what else I was going to say there. Now, if we have an array, and this array contains, let's just say hi and by, two strings. And if I triple equal that array to the same exact array, or what looks like the same array, we get false. So why is this happening? Let's try it with numbers. Just the array 1 equals 1. Okay, what about double equals? No. What about just an empty array? Still no. Why? Well, what happens here when we work with an array, what you have to understand, and it's a little bit tricky, and that sounded forceful, what you have to understand, but what's important to understand is that we're not comparing the contents. JavaScript actually doesn't care about what's inside, at least with arrays. What it's comparing instead are the references in memory. So let's take a step back. I'm going to clear my screen for a moment. When I store a number, like let's do lucky num as 87. When I store that number there is a certain amount of space allocated in memory for this number. In fact, every number is going to get a certain amount of space because there is a maximum size for numbers, right? As I get to, where is it, right about here, I'm out of space, and now this number basically just turns to 1. There's a maximum amount of memory allocated for every single number in JavaScript that I make. But with arrays, that is not the case. I could have an array that has 10 numbers, or an array that has 10,000 numbers, and they're all super long, or 10,000 strings, or 10,000 arrays of arrays of arrays, where it could take up a lot of space. So the way they're stored is a little bit different. Instead of, you can kind of think of it as what we have right here, 87 being stored in lucky num, which is not exactly how it works. But instead of lucky num just being the spot in memory where 87 is, which is kind of what happens here, with an array, if I do something like let lucky nums equal this array, and I'll just type some random numbers in here. What JavaScript does is, instead of trying to associate lucky nums with all the contents of this array, we don't know how big it is. JavaScript doesn't know how much space it takes up or how much it could take up because it can change and all this stuff. So instead, what is stored and what's associated here with lucky nums in this array is a reference. So behind the scenes, you can think of almost like a social security number or a home address that corresponds to this container. So when I do something like this, 1, 2, 3, that is making a new array in memory, and it has its own address, its own reference, its own social security number. And then when I do this here, 1, 2, 3, I'm making another new array in memory, a new spot, a new social security number, whatever you want to refer to it as, and they are distinct. They are not referring to the same thing in memory. The contents are the same, but that doesn't matter here. So I can demonstrate this. If I make a variable, let nums equal 1, 2, 3, same thing that we've already done here. And then I make another variable, let nums copy equal nums. So I'm saying nums is equal to this array in memory. And then I say, make a new variable and set it equal to whatever nums is equal to, whatever they're referring to. Okay, now if I do something to nums, let's just look at nums copy first. Nums and nums copy, they look the same. If I do something to nums.push 4. Let's look at nums. It has 4 on the end. Let's look at the copy. It also has 4. They both are referring to the same thing in memory. I didn't make a new array here. I just said nums is equal to this array in memory, and I want a new variable pointing to the same thing. So think of an arrow. Nums has an arrow pointing to this. Nums copy has another arrow pointing to that same array. So when I change one, the other is altered. If I go the other direction, nums copy dot, and then I'll do pop, nums is also changed. So they are linked, nums copy. They are the same exact reference. So now if I triple equal them, nums triple equals nums copy, What is being compared is the reference. Do they have the same arrow? Are they pointing to the same thing in our memory? Not our memory, but in JavaScript memory. And they are. So trying to compare arrays in JavaScript is really only a thing if you're trying to check if they're the same array, if they're referring to the same thing. But it's not going to help us if we're trying to compare the contents. There are ways of doing that, but they involve a lot more work, and we're just not there yet. So double equals, triple equals are just going to check for the reference in memory. Are they the same? They're not looking at the insides. It doesn't matter at all.